Hello and welcome back to the anatomy lab. It is actually sunny outside for a change, and we're going to talk about the urinary system. So with that in mind, let's go back to our friend over here whom has facilitated most of our capacities for learning the body, and see if we can't go through and explain the parts and pieces of the urinary system. So let's begin. Before we do a whole lot else, I want to say that this PDF that I have uploaded for you is great. There is nothing I'm going to put on your test that can't be found on this PDF. So filling it out, maybe not the greatest image ever. You'll see another one in a second. Filling this thing out, man, is really going to help you see the major parts and pieces that I want you to see. I can pretty well guarantee you that if it's going to be on your test, it's in this handout. So yeah, maybe not the worst idea ever to do the handout. So here we have our torso, and as you probably grasp, all the parts we want are down deep inside of here. And if you want to be kind of technical, we're looking at something right in the back here. All right, right in the back. Your kidneys, let's see if we can set this up. Your kidneys, okay, are considered retroperitoneal, kind of smaller than my fists, okay, a little smaller than your fists, about the size of a bar of soap, really, and they are kind of just like that. You'll see my right one, it's a little lower, and my left one, it's just a little bit higher, okay? And the reason for that is because of this liver. Right, the liver pushes everything down on this side and pushes everything up on this side. So the right kidney is going to be pushed down just a little bit by comparison to the left kidney. So let's pull some stuff out of here and see what it looks like. All right, away we go. So let's get the liver moving, and with it the stomach's going to come out of there. Let's get all the intestines and the pancreas. Ah, now we're getting somewhere. Now, what you got, and again, note the heights. The left kidney's a little high. That's a spleen over here, not a kidney, okay? Left kidney's a little high, right kidney's a little bit low. You can see the adrenal glands capping the tops of these. And if you look, you can see the ureters running down. And those ureters are going to run down and terminate at the urinary bladder. So down here is the bladder. So we got our two kidneys, kidney, ureter off each one, coming down, terminating the bladder. You can see that trigon of the bladder down there. 1, 2, 3 portions. So 2 entrances, one from each ureter, and then 1 exit from the urethra. And if you look inside of there, you can see the undulations in the surface. It tells you quite clearly that this is the bladder. And importantly, this is going to be made out of that transitional epithelium. So you got your detrusor muscle here, you get your bladder lining. This is going to be made out of that transitional epithelium that's going to give the bladder the ability to really stretch and contract and do what it does on a daily basis. So this is your general urinary system. Doesn't look like much. Couple kidneys, couple ureters, bladder, urethra. And if I crack this thing open, yeah, you can actually see a few things down inside of there. I know it's kind of dark. Let's see if we can lean this fellow back. I know it's kind of dark, but you can make out the pyramids here. You can see a little bit of venation. You could probably play minor calyx, major calyx games here, but I'm not going to get into it on this tiny little model. I will, however, point out that you can see this big inferior vena cava, this big descending abdominal aorta. You can see the renal artery and vein there. Okay, very important. Renal artery and vein coming off of these main distributing points, because your kidneys are getting 20+% of your total cardiac output. So you're getting massive quantities of blood flowing into the kidneys. Again, let's wander around the room here. You can look at the kidneys and their location, and you can see that this is going to be big blood flow, man. Lots of blood flow coming off of this descending abdominal aorta. And it's going to be flooding these kidneys with blood pumped straight out of the heart, even carrying down via gravity. So a massive amount of your cardiac output is going to be going into those kidneys. Now, let's look into one at a little more detail. Okay, what I have here is a nice breakdown of general kidney function. Now, I'm going to go through and we're going to label way more parts of this than you probably want to hear about. But what I want to do first is just sort of set you up about general kidney function and how all of these parts sort of work together, and then we'll apply a whole variety of terms to it to sort of help you understand what's happening and where. All right, here we go. First things first, let's do a little bit of blood flow conversation. You've seen these renal arteries coming in, and the way that I've always heard this phrase is that you have segmental arteries and veins, and then between the lobules you'd have, and again these are renal pyramids, but lobules being a variation on the word here. Between these you have interlobar, all right, interlobar arteries and veins, and as you follow these up you run into what are called the arcuate arteries and veins, and then at the top surface in the cortex you can see these little bitty parts here. I believe these are the cortex radiata. I had to go drag out the book for that one, folks. Cortical radiate arteries. I believe I've heard these called the cortico-radiata artery and veins. Okay, arterial networks. So that's what we're dealing with here, and I expect you to be friends with this. You know, just understanding how the blood flows through. Big artery and vein getting smaller and smaller and smaller still. That's very important to how this works. And again, why do we call them the cortico-radiata? Because they're in the cortex. Okay, they're out here in the cortex. So we have our cortex, we have our medulla. This goes into the renal pelvis and then out. So let's go through and talk about the parts and pieces. You can see these little gold bits here in the cortico-radiata. You can see that these are the Bowman's capsule surrounding your glomeruli, and you can see a nice glomerulus here inside of its Bowman's capsule. All right, there it is right there. Here it is smaller, and here it is quite small indeed. Now what will happen is blood is going to be pumped into your glomerulus. Again, this is a very specialized capillary set, fenestrated epithelia, podocytes, all that fun stuff. We'll be looking at that here in a second. The blood pumps into here, leaks out a huge amount of fluid, a large volume, which enters through this Bowman's capsule down into a proximal convoluted tubule with a loop of Henle attached, followed by a distal convoluted tubule that comes back up and touches the back of this thing here. That's what they're trying to show you here, is this distal convoluted tubule. And then all of this will then enter into a collecting duct. The idea is you've got your glomerular filtration happening up here, tubular reabsorption occurring, tubular secretion occurring, and then pulling water out dependent upon hormonal influences via this collecting duct. So right here in the collecting duct, urine is finalized. Everything that's going to be urine is already here after tubular secretion. All the collecting ducts pull a little bit of water out. So everything that's going to be urine is in it already. All the rest of this is just plumbing. All right, we're going to go from a bunch of little collecting ducts. This is why these have this stringy appearance to them. They're just packed with collecting ducts. All these collecting ducts empty. Let's see if you can see it. No, not really. All these collecting ducts from these renal pyramids empty into a minor calyx. Okay, these are these papillae down here. Enter into a minor calyx. Minor calyces come together to form a major calyx. Okay, major calyx. That will all enter into a renal pelvis, and then that exits via the ureter. As we talked about it on our model back here, that will then go down the ureters and into the bladder. So let's go into a little bit more detail and look at some parts in a little finer essence. All right, let's make sure we're together on all this stuff. So we've got one whole nephron here with its glomerulus. It's contained within Bowman's capsule, proximal convoluted tubule, down the loop of Henle. Loop of Henle, by the way, which would be surrounded by this vasa recta. So I expect you to know that. This is the branching capillary network that's going to surround this loop of Henle and assist with the uptake of certain materials. It's going to go back up to the distal convoluted tubule, which comes back around and touches the front of the glomerulus. Helps to regulate it. It's a part of the auto-regulation mechanism of the kidney. And that dumps into the collecting duct, which further finalizes what will become urine by concentrating it down. You can see part of what makes this important right here, okay? In your lab handout, then they've got this image here, and it's functional, but it's just not as good as I'd like. What I want to show you is this one here. So what we have are the fenestrations in the epithelium located here on the glomerulus. If you look at this thing, these little dots here, all these little pores, I think they're trying to make that be fenestrations. I'm not sure, but that seems legitimate. All these little bitty tiny dots, these are probably the cells of the endothelium. So you can see that what looks like a nucleus there and a nucleus there. My bet is those are the nuclei of the endothelium. And then all these tiny little punctums, okay, these little bitty dots. I hope you can see that. They're probably trying to be the fenestrations. So the fenestrations are little holes in between parts of the epithelium. So in some parts of the body, your capillaries are very tightly held. The brain comes to mind. So in your blood capillaries in the brain, the cells are tightly sealed against one another. They actually have tight junctions. In other parts of the body, the capillaries can be quite leaky, and the kidneys are one of these. Okay, the kidneys are quite leaky indeed because the capillaries are fenestrated. They have little pores. They have small openings on them. You can see that right there. Now again, there's this basal lamina in between the two layers here, and this is going to be charged. Again, we are inside of all this structuring here. This basal lamina is going to have a charge. I think it's negatively charged. I don't know what I just said. But anyway, it's charged in a manner that keeps certain proteins out. And then you have filtration slits. Where does it talk about the podocytes? This is a podocytes, what that is. But I guess here we go. So foot of a podocyte process. And regardless, what I want you to see are these. They're trying to show you these podocytes and then these filtration slits. All right. So the capillaries itself inside of there are fenestrated. They have little holes in them. And then just to regulate things a wee bit, we've got these podocytes that cover the capillaries and have little filtration slits. So stuff doesn't just flow through here willy-nilly. It has to be a certain size and of a certain charge in order to escape and get into the glomerulus to become part of the filtrate. Yeah, I think that'll do. Now, I mentioned the filtration rate here. I will point out that this afferent arteriole is massive and the efferent arteriole is much smaller by comparison. This is certainly worthy of our time. So what that's going to do is it's going to increase the general pressure inside of the capsule itself in the glomerulus. And I will also point out back here in the back that this is indeed part of the distal convoluted tubule, but in specifics this is referred to as the macula densa. Okay, macula densa. Okay. And if you're paying attention in lecture, that should make some level of sense to you. But in lab, I'm just curious. I just want to make sure that you can see and identify the variations that occur there. Yeah, there it is. And I think they're probably trying to show you here the juxtaglomerular cells, but I'm not sure exactly what they're going for in that particular case. For my purposes, glomerulus, fenestrations, podocytes with their filtration slits, whole thing's glomerulus, Bowman's capsule, and probably that macula densa, part of that distal convoluted tubule. And I'm pretty happy with that. I think that's enough. Look what I have. Look what I have, folks. Here we have some urine samples. I mean, they're not really urine samples. They're pretend urine samples, but they're close enough for our purposes to learn something from. All right, so what I have here is a little bit of a demonstration. Let's get our camera set up a little better. So what I have are a variety of urine samples. And all of these are a little bit different. These are obviously not real urine samples, and I've got a little test strip kit here. Kind of tells me what we're finding and where and sort of what the story is and all that fun stuff. And we can go through and see the problems associated with these samples. Okay, first things first, cursory glance. they're all a little yellow. All right, if you had urine a little like this, I mean, that's pretty urine-y urine. Okay, so these folks are all a little bit dehydrated from my perspective. You'd really like the urine to be a little more transparent than that. One of these has another issue. If you look at the differences here, you can really see it. Clear, all right, clear, not clear, very cloudy. Cloudy urine, classic example of bacteria hanging out in there. This person has a urinary tract infection, okay? Let's see, what else do we have here? All right, here we go. I have some test strips. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna hit each one of these with a test strip and make sure, let's take a look-see here. We're gonna make sure we get the whole test strip in there, let it have a good soak, and then out it comes to dry. Now, we can take this and we can now read it. And I want you to notice that it looks a little different from the way it was initially, okay? A little different. And the way you read these is very simple. You can pull this thing up and have a look-see to make sure things are normal or not. And if you pay attention here, this thing's going to be negative for ketones. It is going to be negative, I'd say, for glucose. Okay, negative for glucose. The pH is roughly normal. Okay. Maybe a little low, actually. pH is a little low, but that's not what we're looking for here. What we're looking for is the dadgum proteins. Oh my gosh, look at that. All right, this urine sample most certainly has a little bit of protein in it. Now, protein in the urine can be caused by a whole host of things. You could have just been working out really hard and end up with protein in your urine. A little bit can happen. Pregnancy certainly can dictate a little bit of protein in the urine, but it can also be a sign of more long-term stuff. So major kidney disease will oftentimes show a little bit of protein in the urine. Really bad high blood pressure, heart issues can certainly end up with protein in the urine, or chronic infections of the glomeruli can easily give you protein in the urine. So what this isn't a disease by itself, but it's telling us to take a closer look at this patient because there's not supposed to be protein in the urine. And again, this one also is a little cloudy, so we got other stuff happening here. Next, hang on, I guess we'll just do let's go ahead and get rid of that one. Next, let's crack this thing open, grab us another little strip here. And away we go. Crack it open. Now, pay attention. Watch it go in. Soak it for just a wee bit. No joke, or no pun intended there, folks. Then out it comes. All right. Nice urine sample. Take our chart here, and we can have a quick examination. Interesting. Interesting. If you're wondering what I'm up to, I'm not getting the result I expected. Not at all getting the result I expected. So when I look at this, I get negative on ketones, but if you look at the glucose, it is not quite the same as it was. We're getting some green color. So there is definitely some sugar in that urine, okay? On protein, it's a negative. On pH, it's still relatively low, but again, it may just be a side effect of this fake urine that we're using. No, it should be a little acidic. What am I talking about? Jeez, have mercy. My apologies, folks. Your urine should be, somewhere around a pH of 6. This may be a little on the acidic side, but it's close. Again, made this up just for you guys. But if you look, we definitely have some glucose issues here. So if this person has glucose in their urine, what does that tell you? All right, this individual has some degree of diabetes. Something's happening. You got glucose in the urine, man, we're looking at diabetes. We have reached the transport maxima is what it's telling us. Alrighty. So here is yet another sample. Can hit it with a test strip. In it goes. Give it just a second to get settled in. Out it comes. And when you check it, I got a nice negative on ketones. I got a negative on glucose. I've got a roughly negative on protein. And then our pH is just right. This person's got ideal urine, all right? No problems, healthy as a horse. Well, let's hope so. And away we go. So, quick dip. Whoa, did you see that? Something going on there. And out it comes. Let's see what the heck's going on here, huh? Alright, so roughly normal on ketones, roughly normal on glucose, roughly normal on proteins, but holy cow, this thing turned crazy blue when it comes to pH. Alright, so this is very alkaline. Alright, so your urine, again, should have a pH of about 6. What this does is it helps you kill off bacteria, prevents UTIs. It's good to have your urine pH be a little acidic. It's very important that your kidneys are pulling acidic components, hydrogen ions, out of the blood and sticking them in the urine. So if your blood has a pH that is elevated like that, 8, 9, very much on the alkaline side of the scale, man, you got other problems. This is normally a sign of like eating disorders in a lot of cases. So there's weird things that happen when somebody is not, when someone is has malnutrition, I should say. And this can also be a sign of really bad renal failure. So if the kidneys aren't pulling the acidic components out of the blood, then the blood's going to turn acidic and you're going to end up with problems. So that would be emergency room time. Yeah, we're wanting to take care of business quick. All right, let's see what else we got. Last but not least, team, we have this one. And that should be pretty dadgummed obvious what's going on there. If you're going to the bathroom and it's coming out like this, you go to the emergency room. So this is classic blood in the urine. A whole host of things can cause this. If you get a blood transfusion and they pipe in the wrong fluids, i.e. your type A blood and they give you type B, this is what's going to happen to your urine. Okay, this is certainly a side effect of a blood transfusion, and that can very quickly lead to renal failure because everything's getting clogged up inside of there. All that blood in the urine, also a sign of hemolytic anemia when you're breaking down red blood cells. Really bad burns can actually cause a lot of blood to get into the urine as it's being broken down, and also kidney stones. Okay, kidney stones, the way you would check for a kidney stone is you'd look for blood in the urine. I mean, it's just how this works. So when you see bloody urine like this, it's really telling you something, all right? Even if you are subject to a lot of trauma, like any kind of job where you're having to vibrate a lot, bouncing up and down, impacts like a car wreck can certainly lead you to this sort of situation. And as I talked about in lecture, back in the day, and even now, if you ride a motorcycle for a prolonged period of time and your kidneys are constantly bouncing around, when you go to the bathroom, I mean, it shouldn't come out looking quite this bad, but it'll be a little bloody. So blood in the urine, certainly a bad thing, and something you need to be wary of. All right, that's a nice way of looking at urinalysis. Urinalysis is an incredibly informative tool between looking at variations in the blood and looking at variations in the urine. You can really tell a lot about what's wrong with somebody. So it's a wonderful wonderful tool and means of evaluating potential issues, I should say. And we're a lot better at it today than we have been in the past. Those test strips were more of a thing of the past. Most of the time now we take a urine sample and put a little bit of it into a machine, I should say, and it spits an output to us without us having to physically read. In most cases, they still go through and do certain tests by hand in certain situations, but most of the time you just feed it into a machine, which is a lot better than in the past. There are lots of famous examples of early medical doctors having to taste urine and sniff it and all sorts of terrible things in order to figure out what's wrong with somebody. So these test strips are way more handy. Now, with that in mind, let's do some histology. What we have here is a nice kidney slide, and where we are looking at the moment is in the cortex of the kidney. I can actually zoom this out just a little bit. You can see all these little round circles all in there. There's one, there's one, there's one, there's one, there's one. They're all over the place. All these round circles, these are all going to be glomeruli of the kidney. So you can see the glomerulus, glomerulus, glomerulus right there, glomerulus right there. So those are glomeruli. They would be surrounded by those capsules, Bowman's capsule. If I zoom this in a little bit, you can sort of see what we're dealing with here. You can see the gap in between the glomerulus, which is the dark thing, and the surrounding tissue. So that is obviously, obviously going to be a Bowman's capsule with a glomerulus inside of it. Now, if you look around here, there are all of these circular and lengthwise bits inside of there. These are all kidney tubules, okay? All kidney tubules. So these are probably proximal and distal convoluted tubules, parts of loops of Henle, all that fun stuff. It's just all in here, all in it. But if I zoom out, you can probably see the shift from cortex, which is all this, to medulla, okay? Notice now, there are no more glomeruli. No glomeruli anywhere to be found. There is like the last one of the cortex. All of this is all going to be, the medulla. So we're looking at parts of the urinal pyramids. And if you look, you can see some of these longer strand bits here, all of this. Those are all going to be parts of collecting ducts making their way down into the core of the kidney itself. Like you can really tell. Like you can see the cortex and how it looks, and then look at the medulla and how it looks. It's just a very different, how's my focus? I can't really tell. Different situation altogether. Again, cortex, medulla. Okay, very different. So yeah, that's a nice kidney. All right, folks, I just wanted you guys to see this because I thought it was kind of fascinating. You can really see the convoluted tubule nature here. So we're looking at either proximal or distal convoluted tubules. You can see all the undulations within them, and that is why when we look at them in the book, they're all sort of undulating. They are called convoluted tubules for a reason, and that's because of these undulating paths that they take. And I believe if I go this way, that is probably part of a collecting duct, if I had to guess. Big collecting duct with convoluted tubule dumping into it. Pretty neat stuff. What I have here is something kind of interesting. This is a ureter. Let's see if I can play with the contrast here. Yeah, that'll do. So that's a ureter. And if I zoom in on it, what you can see here is the transitional epithelium that lines the internal portions of the ureter. So it makes this the mucosa. And then on the next layer, we have our muscularis. All right, there's certainly muscularis there, made out of smooth muscle. And on the outside, you'd have your adventitia, okay? Yeah, I think that'll do. That'll work a little bit. So you can see the lumen, you can see the mucosa and the submucosa, and muscularis there with the adventitia on the outside. Not bad. Not bad at all. Kind of interesting. Not the best I've ever seen, but you know, you take what you can get. Last but not least here, I have a nice slide of the bladder. So you can see the rugae on the internal surface with the bladder being mostly collapsed. These are wrinkles. You can see the detrusor muscle inside of there that would make up the musculature of the bladder. And if I zoom in on the mucosa, yeah, what you can see there are these little round cells. Let's see if I can change my coloration a little. Yeah, you can see these little round cells on the outer margin. This is classic transitional epithelium, okay? The reason we call it transitional epithelium is because the cells appear around now, but when the bladder expands, those cells flatten out quite quickly. So this is classic bladder tissue. You can see it nice and clean, this transitional epithelium. And that's about the extent of it, folks. So that's a nice breakdown of the urinary system. I'm going to try to get some quizzes to you real quick, and probably shoot the reproductive system in the morning. So that will be the extent of what we need for the exam, and this is the extent of the urinary system of the exam. So thank you very much. Hope you benefited from the video today, and have a good one.